Okay, folks, this is Paramay Trades. This is Paramay's Trade Journal. Welcome back. We just did the Commit Traders Friday Roundup, and that's been posted. We took a quick look at the S&P, ES, and we're going to take another look at it, just a more in-depth look at it, just with the amount of sell-off that's been going on, a lot of the fear that's been in the market. Is the market searching for a bottom? Is the market going to continue to sell off? I have no idea. That's why we're going to look at the chart to see where we can find some optimal trade setups. See if we can find some pivots. See if the bleeding's going to stem or if it's going to continue. I think that things have been getting, at least in the global scene, getting a little bit worse. So just within the last week, Trump, I think on Friday, closed the borders for travel. So the United States is not allowing people to fly into the country. I know the United Kingdom was on the list of countries that could travel to the United States, but there's been some recent developments in that too. And I've got a friend who was coming over from the UK, and they just told me that their flights were canceled. So how will this affect things? How will this affect the market? Will the fear and the greed or continue? Will the sell-offs continue? We don't know. We're going to take a look, but we've got to pay attention to what's going on. At least with commitment traders, they're not optimistic, right? So we like to be aligned with these guys with big money because they usually have a pretty good idea. At least so we think. So we think that they usually like to be on the right side of the trade. So things not looking good for the S&P. It hasn't for like probably 2 weeks. So we're going to look at the chart. So something that I like to do at least on a weekly basis is just completely clean the chart up. Take everything off. Get a nice clean look at things. We can even take off the contract change events. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's nice and clean, right? Yeah, get a pretty good look at what's going on here. Ultra bears are rejoicing, right? This has been good for bears, right? So we're going to go back even further. I don't usually, this is, getting a weekly look at this just so we can find some areas where this may find some kind of bounce, right? I don't use Fibonacci very often. I mean, here's the last sell-off, right? And that looked a little cleaner than what's been going on right now. And I don't like to go too far back with descending highs. I like to just kind of, this was nice, right? Like that was a nice, this was a nice pivot here. This was a nice swing pivot. And this looked really good. So this looked like a market bottom, right? So we look at this market bottom in comparison to what's going on right now. And this looked like a bottom. At least on the weekly chart. And these are, you gotta remember, these are weeks. So we'll go weekly range high. And we'll do weekly range low because this is the first pivot. So what am I doing here? What am I doing? If we're going to talk about a market bottom or the potential for a market bottom, we need to see something. We need to see something that's going to tell us that the market sentiment is changing. So I haven't looked at this far back at all. This is the first time we're looking at this, right? So we've got this nice descending high pattern. We've got this nice inverted head and shoulders pattern, if you will. There's your shoulder, there's your head, there's your shoulder, right? So where on this chart were you a buyer at the bottom of this when we decided that, maybe, hey, this is bottoming out and we want to be a buyer? Sweep of the lows, come up, did not sweep the highs, right? Did not sweep the high, at least on the weekly, did not sweep the high. But we did sweep the lows down here. This looked like market sentiment was changing. This looked like things were starting to switch direction. And let's just turn back. So I turned off market sentiment so that we could get a better look at the S&P chart. But where was market sentiment when this thing decided to turn around? Well, when market sentiment is low, think rally, right? Call it oversold, overextended, whatever it is. These are better buying opportunities down in here when market sentiment is diminishing in the way that it is. And this is how I view, market sentiment. It's not rock bottom, but it's getting there, right? It just so happened that, rock bottom market sentiment is where we had a nice bounce play here. I mean, this may have been your key indication, right? Here's your long-term low. Here's your head and shoulder on the weekly. That's looking like market wants to change and go the other direction. So if you're a buyer down in here, maybe off of a technical test in this area, right up against this high pivot. Ooh, wow, look at that, right? Right on top of the weekly high range. Remember, if you weren't convinced, breakout buyer here or here, the time to buy was right here in this area on a retest. Well, multiple times we found support right on that weekly high range. So that looked pretty good. That's hindsight, right? I mean, you look back at a chart, everything looks easy when after the fact. It all looks simple. It looks all very simple. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Let's look at this sell-off. What did this sell-off have to tell us? Does it look, anything like the last sell-off? Was there a similar pattern that we could have followed that emerged here that looked pretty darn similar to the last sell-off, at least on the weekly chart? And it's strange that it's trading near that range, right? So there's the previous weekly high range, and there's the weekly low range, and we came down and we swept. These lows swept the previous lows. So what could we have derived from the chart that was telling us that this thing was going to turn around and break out and go the other way? Two market bottoms that look strikingly similar. Almost 8 years apart, almost 9 years apart. Market sentiment on the weekly is rock bottom here. Is now the time to be a buyer. Right, so let's get rid of that. Let's just take a look at what the range did on the weekly. So we bounced here. This is a bounce. I wouldn't consider this your range, right? This looks like a better range right here. On the weekly at least. And is that your range high? Where is your range high? Right here? Where's that your range high? Sweep of the highs. Breakout. No retests, right? What are we looking at here? Oh, here's a nice swing high pivot, right? Swing low to swing high. Sweep the lows, come up, can't sweep the highs. Sweep the lows again here on this range. I like this range better. I just don't. This is a nice bounce, but I just don't know what happens when we draw the range. So if we say, here's a range low, here's a range high, does that help us at all in the grand scheme of ranges? I just don't think that it does. I think that this sell-off was just so violent that, you know, it was destined to bounce here a little bit. Is this a better range to work with? This looks a lot like the last low, right? You know, much larger trading range in this area. Where's the 50% area on this? You know, where's the halfway mark at this range low to this range high? I picked this up from an article. It's actually pretty cool. It's actually pretty nice. To, you know, a fellow trader had pointed this out. This is another guy uses ranges, but what he does is he uses 50% of the total range, and I've been doing that lately just to see what's going on. Is it helpful? I don't know. Yeah, it just puts it in perspective. You know, here's the total range, and here's half the range. So and we traded below. We swapped the lows. Up we go. We have a nice ascending higher low pattern here. Well, let's just extend it. Let's just extend it up here. I mean, the inverse head and shoulders, this pivot should have been a pretty good indication. Didn't really get much of a technical test up until this area. And there wasn't much confluence here either. It's just a swing low to swing high pivot. Always in hindsight, right? So, I mean, I would have looked for a test probably at the top of this range here, but you know, we broke out of this range. Never came back down and retested it, but it did test this swing high pivot. But I think you were a buyer down in here, right? Maybe you're a breakout buyer here. It almost looks like a false high, right? So we swing low to swing high, swing low to swing high, and then we break the high. We sweep the highs, and then we find support somewhere down here. But I think this is your swing pivot on the weekly. This is the bet that you take, really. Once this low is in, nice powerful candle coming off this, and then a second up week, and then this short-term pivot. Well, it's not. Did that trade lower? So close, double bottom. That looks like a nice swing pivot, right? So this candle right here, nice powerful candle. This was a pretty darn good candle too. Pretty darn good candle, but could they stem the bleeding? It looks like, you know. Looks like they couldn't. Looks like bears took over here. But I like that head and shoulders look, inverted head and shoulder look. I like that swing pivot. Both times we've got similar pivots here. They indicated that the market was gonna go the other way. Where else did we have like a major sell-off where we got a nice swing pivot? Oh, what's this here? Well, this was just a miraculous bounce, right? So higher low, higher low. Here's your lower low. Here's your here's your 3-week swing pivot that you could have found here. And then we have a nice swing pivot off of this. Yeah, we've got a higher low here. Is that respectable? Is that good God? You know, is this applicable? Is this pivot, applicable here? If not, we got one here too. And this is just looking at the weekly. I mean, we drill down a little bit more. I mean, I don't know. It's a little harder here. We've been a breakout buyer here. What does this look like, though? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, just looking at the chart, I mean, where is this thing going to find support, and where it's going to pivot? To get a swing pivot like this, a short term or a long term, or an intermediate, whatever you want to call it, on the weekly, I would call this a long term low, a long term pivot. Where are we going to get that here? This is a tremendous amount of sell pressure right now. When's this thing going to bottom out? So again, what do we have here with market sentiment? Diminishing or almost rock bottom sentiment, and that looked appetizing to to the participants here, to the buyers and sellers. Sellers are exhausted, buyers take advantage. They're starting to like market sentiment on the weekly because in 3 cases when we had either rock bottom or diminishing market sentiment, that's when we knew that it's time to go the other way. Nobody's interested in it anymore. Good prices, better prices, wholesale prices. I think everybody will. Everybody in the trading social media will be at some point claiming a bottom. And they'll be claiming bottom for weeks and maybe even months to come. But the reality is, there's no swing pivot here on the weekly. There's nothing here, man. This is just an absolute shredding. Best you can hope for in a new week is maybe a little bit of a retrace here. Just get your higher low here, and where's this thing going to open? Unless it gaps up, you're not going to get a swing pivot like this. It's not in the works yet. It don't look like this. It don't look like the bleeding has been stemmed. I mean, here's 2 nice big candles, weekly candles, right? That, and the selling off, continued. This was a little bit more respectable of a bear market, and then we had a nice swing here. But with this, I don't know what to say. Other than, I don't think it's done. Look at where market sentiment is. I mean, this is sharp on the weekly. This is sharp. Almost call this a diversion, right? Oh, price is moving up. Market sentiment's moving down. Why is it moving up when market sentiment is moving down? Don't know. Right? Look where we are with market sentiment. This is. I don't think was anybody prepared well for this. I don't think so. I have no idea what is going to happen here. I don't think that the fear in the market is going to change anytime soon. I think it's going to be some time before things start to turn around. Let's do something I don't usually do, which is take a look at the 3-year. We're going to turn off market sentiment and we're going to turn on volume profile. Don't usually look at volume profile, but we've got to find somewhere where there's, I mean, when's this thing going to slow down? I haven't traded near these lows since 2000, almost a year. That's such a sharp decline. And look at all this white space going on up in here. Look at all this. Look at all this white space. With exception of this area here, look at all this white space going on down here. I gotta tell you, man, even if you were a buyer here, even if it did go a little bit lower, will it go lower? I don't know. I have no idea. We said we're going to turn on market profile. Let's do that. Or volume profile. Let me see something here. Is there anything that would indicate? Oh, I mean, here's that area, right? So we've got this marked off, right? And this is in the last 3 years. I mean, this is in the low value range here. This is so low. Minimal market acceptance going on up in this area. You would have expected some kind of a bounce going on in here. And now we're peeled all the way down at these lows at 24.44 and going the other direction where got a lot to get through. Fed's injected money into the system. Gosh, folks, I really don't know what to say about this chart. Anybody who says that they do, I think is lying. So we had this ascending high, ascending higher lows, kind of pattern that we can look at here, and we can see that there was quite a bit of trading going on in this area. There were some brave buyers in this area who thought maybe this might recover a little bit here. At least, I mean, that's what I make out of it, right? Is there any strange occurrence here that there was a lot of buying in this area? Or maybe a lot of short covering? I don't know. It was a nice pivot, though, in the daily, right? We got a higher low, we've got this lower low, and we've got this powerful candle that tries to recover a little bit. And then whatever happened with the news and with global economies and with the Fed and other governments getting involved. There's a lot going on here. So I don't think the daily is going to be too helpful. It's probably a little more helpful here too, right? And plenty of opportunities, plenty of higher low, swing looks here. I said that maybe this is turning around, plus a break of the descending high pattern here. So, I mean, if you're a breakout trader, there it was. So let's look at the 4 hours, see if we can see anything. Big, huge fan of playing the intraday charts, which is, 15-minute and 5-minute charts, but with the way the market is right now, I just don't see. Ooh, what can we get? So here's your 4 hour, right? And that was a nice, it was not a nice pivot, right? Because this traded lower. So this wasn't helpful. at least in terms of swings. So let's look at the 1 hour. Anything good on the 1 hour? This would be a short-term bottom, maybe? It's possible. Let's just turn off this. We got a lot to get through up in here. A lot to get through. Let's just turn off volume profile. It wasn't helpful. I don't think that I hit on any points anyway. So, I mean, I don't usually use it, so it doesn't. I don't know that it helps me that much with the way that I trade. I like to get in my lower time frames, and I really like to get in there and find out where the trading areas are, because they're areas. I'm not concerned about exact levels. You know, I'd be meticulous about exact price levels. They're just places to look anyway. And they take a blind short at 3,100. If this decides to retrace, you know, all the way up and retest that, you can take a blind test there. I would watch it. I would be ready to take a short there. Just like I would be ready to take a short here. I would be ready to take a short. I don't know that would set my bids. At least I don't think so. I don't want to get rid of this. I don't want to look at this. And I didn't mark this off, so I'm going to get rid of that too. So, can our lower time frames tell us anything about whether this thing's bottoming out or not? So we didn't really get a strong swing pivot here. Pivot low to pivot high. Is this your trading range, you know? With whatever was going on over here. Market shut down. You know, God knows what. Massive sell-offs. So your range low here. I guess that's not... So quickly we identified, you know, oh, this could, you know, here's a pivot low to pivot high. This could potentially be one of our shorter term pivots, you know, to work with here. You know, do you get kind of like a shoulder head, you know, kind of shoulder look? Here's your descending high pattern. Right. And get a breakout. Where can we find support up in here? In this tiny little range? Who knows? We know there was a lot of selling going on here. We know bears struck here. And we know the liquidity was taken here. You know, I really wish TOS would put a way to draw a straight trend line without having to fiddle with, you know, like, is there any way to put a horizontal trend line? Is there like a control button? Is there an alt button? Something like that. So liquidity taken here. Breakout traders probably rejoicing here because they got this one right. And this happened right at the close of Friday. So is this, you know, strong candle? Is this power candle happening right here? An indication of where market sentiment is heading in the coming weeks. We don't even have to look left. I'm not looking left right now because I don't think that it matters. In terms of the longer time frames, we saw on the daily and on the weekly, it's just one big red candle. There's no pivot. There's no help. There's nothing helpful there. Where is it going to stop? Who knows? I think you've got to get down on your lower time frames and just find a swing pivot like this and to just, get into this trade and pray that there's going to be a market bounce. So what kind of, looking at, we come back down and test this area, right? And come back down and test this breakout, short-term technical test, and away we go. We get some ample retrace. This is going to gap down this week, or this is going to gap up. So that'd be really nice, right? So we cleared that out. We cleared that, these two short-term pivots out on the 1 hour. 15-minute chart's really my favorite chart. It really is. I think it's just, you can see more. So let's go for that range low. And I'm sorry I'm not too articulate today. I thought I would be a little bit more with it on a Saturday, but I'm not. So we'll take that as a range high. So why do we use these things? These range lows and range highs. What's the big deal? What does it matter? We try to find an area where there's a lot of trading going on. You're just looking for areas. And I always put on the chart where I found these trading ranges or these trading areas. So where there's a lot of confluence. We get a nice pivot here, right? So you look at the 15-minute and you go, well, why mark this off, right? Why mark this area off? Well, this looked like a pretty good swing. And the market sentiment was saying another thing. So we've got this, short-term low pattern going on here. And then just at the end of the trading day, on Friday, we had a nice, strong candle. So granted, it did gap down. It did not take out this low. And then here we go to retest and retrace and challenge some levels that we lost. Are we saying that this is going to repeat itself because that's what we got? Well, what is the market telling us right now? So at the end of trading day on Friday, were we getting short coverage or were we getting positions? Were we getting long positions? Because, we think that this is going to trade a little bit higher, or because the market or its participants think that it's going to trade higher. So we get a nice gap down opening on Sunday. Come down, retest this line so very quickly, and then find some support there. We broke out of it. It's got to, quick test. Find out if buyers are for real here. If bulls on the sideline are going to participate, and we'll get some retrace. A lot of white space on that daily chart. Huge sell-off. What other ways can we look at this here? Swing pivot. That's not. I would consider that a nice short-term swing pivot, right? As a candidate. Apparently some participants thought so too, especially on this candle. We had a nice bull defense here, and away we went. Had a nice hike. So what do I have to say? Let's wrap this up. Let's wrap up the S&P. Where do I think it's going this week? I think a lot is going to depend on all the fear bantering that's going to happen in the news. I don't think that things have changed from last week to this upcoming week. things look pretty grim. But maybe we can retrace here. Commercial interests, one of the leading indicators that we follow, are not very optimistic at this point. But how much more downside do we have? On the daily time frame, we don't really, or the weekly time frame. So there's just not enough data there to say that the market's going to turn around here on a single candle. And we have to see what this week shapes up like. A lot of money injected into the economy, 168, I think, billion. Is that going to help? Don't know. Not my area of expertise. And is this my area of expertise? Just looking at the chart, I'd like to think so. I'd like to think I know at least a little. But the market's going to do whatever the hell it wants to do anyway. And we saw that with this gigantic sell-off. Fear and panic starting to set in. Everybody's telling their employees to stay home, don't travel, don't do this, don't do that. You go to the grocery stores and people are flocking to the hand sanitizer. Nobody will touch carts or, make sure they wash their hands. Everybody's paranoid. You weren't doing that before, and there was plenty of viruses floating around too. It's flu season. It's this, it's that. Well, having the flu is miserable. I bet having this virus is pretty miserable too. Do I think that the fear and the panic is justifiable? I don't know. The world's trying to take care of this the best way that it possibly can. And all we're doing really is looking at the charts because we want to make money from it. So if the market wants to be irrational, I'll fucking short it. Pardon my language. If the market wants to be irrational, short it. If they wanna get optimistic, I'll go long. Hope, despair, hope, despair. Right now it's just a yo-yo. It's just a yo-yo. And we knew this wasn't getting any better in the first couple of weeks that it started happening. But they pushed the market higher, and then everybody got out. Bravo if you caught the short position on the S&P, because what you would have looked for is just a pivot just like this. I would have looked for a swing pivot just like this. And let's see if we can make this look like something else. So we look for these short-term pivots, these short-term swings, or short-term lows, whatever you want to call them, whatever you fancy. I'm going to call it a head and shoulders bottom, or an inverted head and shoulders bottom. Go ahead, but this is a short-term swing. So where did this look like this before? Where did we get this? Will it give me 90 days? Will TOS give me 90 days on a 15-minute chart? Yeah, so there was our top, right? Here's our top. And what do we have? What do we look for? I mean, this was already blazing, right? This was already pushing the upper boundaries at this point. So we'd look for the same thing. And you find these on the 15-minute chart a little bit quickly, a little bit more reactive on the 15-minute chart. So you can see these impulses, right? You can see this impulse off the top, and you can see that we set a lower high next to it. So here's your swing pivot staring you right in the face. And if you took this trade on a retest of, you couldn't take out this high, couldn't take out this high. So if you're looking for a short-term high or a long-term high, this happened to be your long-term high, I guess. A short-term high turned into your long-term high. So you got to retest, in this area, and you shorted it, and you went short. Why'd you go short? This candle broke out quite handsomely. Biggest candle in a couple of day time frame. So this is where all the chaos started, right? Probably when the market decided, hey, this coronavirus thing is the real deal, and I'm getting out. And I want to book my profits. This thing's already been blazing all-time highs. I couldn't even come back up and retest any of these areas that we blasted through anyway. So if you got into the trade like we did back here when we saw the swing pivot, so here's a nice short opportunity. We couldn't retest. We broke this line. You're a breakout trader, breakout short. Maybe you want to test the bottom of the range, hoping that it's gonna swing through this low, and you got lucky that you were in this short trade. But it looked a lot similar to the last pattern. Just looking for, call it a head and shoulder top or whatever you want. That's how the literature, I think, identifies it. Here's your head and shoulder top. But the subtlety of it and the identity of it came on the 15-minute chart. It didn't come on the daily chart. You weren't given an opportunity on the daily chart to do this. If you're down here on your 15-minute chart, you saw this swing and you got lucky and you got in this trade. And then there was nothing in the way, really, that indicated that there was, a bottom whatsoever. Ooh, that came pretty close, right? That was almost double bottom action. I mean, so you got a little swing here. You got a little bit of a retrace. But then what did we have in return? Very subtle swing pivot here. Could not get up over it. This is like the market's way of saying we don't want to trade higher. Why can I not? The market's way of saying we don't want to trade higher. This is hard. It's not clear cut. It's it's not very easy to see that. But what if we came down into this range? Swing low, swing high. Swing low, swing high. Yeah. I don't think we're going long here anyway. I really don't. With what was going on in the news and everything else and all the fear and the panic, it just didn't look like a good area to go long. It looked like a good area to go short, though. So this looked good, right? There's all that, that build up going on in this area. A lot of build up, a lot of violence. Got this nice swing pivot. I mean, that looked like a good trade setup, right? I mean, it's violent as hell, but this at least gave some kind of indication that maybe we'll get some retrace. So are we getting something like that here? Did we get something like that in here too? I guess if you're a scalper, pay attention to these, these swings. So here's your low, here's your higher low. And we got a nice defense, and we got a little bit of a build up before we broke. And so then maybe you're a breakout trader there, and you got a nice scalp going on. But just about double topped on the top of this range. A lot of liquidity going on up in this area, I'll tell you that much. So if we come up and retest this area to take that liquidity, could be an area, it could be a good area there to take profits if this does go up here. At least that's what I would think. Could be wrong. I'm wrong a lot. But I don't mind being wrong a lot, as long as they come with very tiny losses. As long as you're prepared to get out of the trade if you identify that this is going the wrong way. And I've, with this trade, I identified that there was a nice. Oh no, it was gold. It was gold. It wasn't this trade, But I am going to be forthcoming and transparent and say that I am long here. I am long on this trade because I like this. Could this just kind of trickle back down? Yeah, absolutely. But we have what we have. I got to work with what we got, and I think that this I think it's a nice opportunity here. So I got to watch the market open. Wow, this video has gone way too long, and gosh, we've got tons more videos to go. So I'm just going to wrap up here and say that this is what I got. This is what I got for you, and yeah, sorry if it's not super great quality today, but this is what we have on a lazy Saturday. Because I'm home charting instead of doing other stuff. Tomorrow, on the other hand, I'm going to go get some spring riding in and get out on the slopes before it's all gone and try to restore some of my sanity. Before we go, I mean, how do we not identify this? So we just barely took out this high, right? So here's your swing pivot, right? Your swing high pivot. Your short-term high. So I mean, if we identify this and a retest, you're short here. Obviously, this is prior to having the descending high-low pattern, lower high pattern. Lower high, yeah. I gotta remind myself of this sometimes. We had two touches here, right? We didn't get over it. We came up, kind of retested it. But I mean, you get short here, right? Yeah. All right, let's see what we can do here. We'll see what we can get out of this movement. See if this pattern holds true. Or are we going to get a short-term high pattern? I'd like to see it come down and trade straight up through it. I really would. I don't care if it goes to the moon. I'm long here. It comes up and retests that 15-minute range high pattern. It's fine with me. I'm long. Breakout trade here. So, you want to come after my stop? Go ahead. There's a, it's floating around. Some people talk about this every once in a while. Stop hunting. People go after your stops. That's such a weird thing, right? I don't think they're coming after your stops. I think you're just putting them in the wrong damn place. And if you think that's the case, take the liquidity, swing high, sweep the highs, and then, turn the other way. Then put your bids up here. Put your bids up there. Lest you see a great deal of buildup going on up against this 15-minute range high. I'm sorry. Put your sells in here. Unless you see a lot of buildup happening up against this line and liquidity taken, the chances are it's probably going to break. I wouldn't be selling up here. But if this thing gets overextended, and you think it's going to break and go to, maybe it will. Bulls take the stairs, bears take the window. So if we're going to get, some nice movement here on this chart, look for the bulls to take the stairs here. The cautious stairs. And look for the bears to jump out. Okay, gone on long enough. 15-minute video is way too long, but it is a journal entry, so I don't feel entirely too bad about it. Verbalizing these things is pretty good. So thanks for joining. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for hopefully you fast forwarded through all the garble and found something useful out of this. Try to be a little bit more articulate in the next videos. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you find yourself on the profitable side of the trade, and we'll see you on the next video.